Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 17, this time with Kismeteer.
What's up, guys? How's it going? Yes, you got it right.
Yes! All right. Is it Kismet, as in like Kismet, like karma, or
yes?
What? Excellent.
It's a stupid magic card, and someone had already taken Kismet, so I made it spacey. So I don't know.
That's actually how I recognized it. Good. All right. Well, we're all nerds here. That much is sorted. Let's jump into this. As I was kind of saying a little bit in the pre-show, I'm not that familiar with you or your campaign or anything like that. So this is going to be a good exploration. I don't think you've ever ran for the CSM before.
Nope.
All right. So we have your card that was made by CCP or put up by CCP, which are really cool, I think. But you give yourself a 5 in MPE, a 4 in nullsec, a 3 in ship balance, and a 3 in in-game overview. So let me actually pull this over here. It says that you have a long history of doing a little bit of everything in EVE. My hope for joining CSM is threefold. 1, encourage more ship rebalancing. 2, improve the game for new bros. And 3, keep CCP from stepping on themselves. So let's just go ahead and work these through in order, starting with number 1. How exactly would you encourage more ship rebalancing? And more importantly, how would you do it in a way that hasn't already been done? I mean, everybody says that, right?
I feel that they've done this successfully in the past. I did a Reddit post associated with this that the interdiction rebalancing was extremely popular. I am mainly a Dictor solo pilot main. That's all I fly is Dictors, basically.
Okay.
And so that Dictor pass was fantastic. All of the ships are very good at what they do. And I feel that there's a lot of ships in EVE. And the reason I want rebalance is not necessarily I don't want to necessarily change the meta of everyone flying Unins and Serbs and Eagles. I can't fix that. That's too hard. And we have a lot of people putting their expertise in it. I just want the shitty ships improved. It's a simple thing. If we could just take the crappy ships that no one uses, do small improvements, make them more popular. The ones that I think are very easy are the assault frigates. In that same thread, I talk about what I would do with assault frigates, but it's just changing a couple numbers. And the key is you don't just sit on it, because that's what's happening right now. They're looking for this perfect formula that, people analyze for months and months and months. I think this is good. They release it, and then they don't touch it for 2 years, because that's what's happening.
Do you think that's still true? Because I think it's become less true recently, at least.
I feel that the pace is really slow, and I feel that they should be constantly addressing new groups of ships that are the least used ships. And it's very easy to pull those numbers. The easiest way, of course, is Z-Kill for players. CCP has a lot more tools. Like, when was the last time you saw someone in, a Sacrilege? If you've seen someone in a Inquisitor, if you've seen somebody in, the T1 the Deacon that I can't remember, that might be the Inquisitor. But there's all these ships that nobody flies, and it's small things that they could go ahead and do, improve things to go ahead and make them better. And the key is that they don't just do it on the major patches. They do it on minor patches. They go ahead and tweak a couple numbers, see how they perform, see if people are enjoying them. If it's too powerful, go ahead and tweak them again the next week. These are small changes that can be done. And I feel that maybe some of the harder ones might be, but I mean, mostly what we're doing is, changing speeds to make them faster, because everyone's doing kitey stuff. I think that's just the way the game has gone, and the slow ships don't have a chance. So do you make everything kitey? I don't know. But the thing is, if you constantly have this balance pass constantly happening, it's rapid iteration. If you look at most of the ITO world, we've moved to this iteration concept of fail fast. If something doesn't work, no big deal. You change some numbers, and then, you might have some supply issues. This is the only concern, is you might have overproduction of these T1 hulls that are good, really good this first week, and then really crappy later on. So that'd be my only concern.
Well, so all that's fine in a world in which you can just pick a different class or pick a different job or whatever. But each of these different ships, especially T2, represent a pretty significant commitment. One of the issues when it comes to any iteration, let alone rapid iteration, is that there's an accusation that gets levied against CCP that they're somehow doing this to pump people to have to buy skill injectors to be able to like keep up with the flavor of the month. What would you say to those people? How would you prevent that from becoming a concern?
No, you're 100% right. And I feel I'm not happy with the skill injector. If you notice from my card, my most passionate thing is New Bros. So I am a recruiter and NBI for Newbie Initiative inside Horde. I'm one of our most active ones, encouraging new players. If you look at a bunch of people in chat, you'll see I see a bunch of people that I've personally trained into flying ships. I feel that CCP encourages people to skill inject too quickly, and they encourages them to do things. So that's why I would like to start with more of the T1 ships. The assault frigates are very easy to go ahead and get into, again, because I feel that they are the least used ships. And if you have the least used ships being improved, you have a better chance of people trying to fly in those. And granted, this will happen over, you'll get an announcement that, maybe the day of patch of, hey, we tweaked this ship. We improved this ship. And it's going to be something that's in the bottom of Z-Kill. You're talking about, there are 250 other ships that are more popular than this ship. And you could do 1 or 2 ships per patch. You could do an entire class. That might take a little bit more planning. The assault frigate pass, that would take more planning. But by saying, hey, we took this ship that was kind of garbage and we went ahead and made it actually flyable. I'm just saying it's pretty easy to go ahead and justify why a ship nobody uses should be used. Now, if they'll be skill injected too, I think that's more of a problem that CCP has fundamentally with how they handle New Bros. They are advertising specifically to go ahead and encourage people, hey, spend this money and you can immediately jump into a Gila and afford Omega. I don't know how many times you've seen this happen yourself, but I've seen a lot of New Bros buy their way into Gila, lose it quickly, and then they're done. Right. They quit the game. And I hate that. I hate the fact that I've been playing since 2005. I don't know how many friends you've encouraged personally to join. Hey, I play this game EVE Online, or if your friends are sick of hearing it, none of my friends will play. They've played for maybe like a day or two, and then they're done. And these, granted, these are normal gamer people that play, like, I don't know. Right now, one of them's playing Horizon or whatever like that. But if you look at all of our friends, all of us that are gamers have friends. None of them play EVE with us. It's a very, very minority.
Let's not throw around assumptions like real life friends here, okay? Like that's we established we're all nerds. I do want to actually push back a little bit because you mentioned like the Inquisitor, and somebody mentioned in chat the Slasher. The thing is that like these, and this is something I run into all the time, where people will say X is useless, but like me being in faction warfare, like I may see those things all the time. And so it could just be that they have a different niche than what people are used to. So that is actually one of my bigger concerns when it comes to these rebalancing things, because, if you're saying, well, it doesn't do us any good over in SOV, well, but it's part of a very delicate ecosystem on the faction warfare side. Yeah.
And I feel that there's ways for us to go ahead and figure that out pretty quickly. The one that I think is the best example, is the Vengeance. I think the Vengeance in the is a ship that could use adjustment.
All right, I can't argue that one.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the last time you saw one of those in faction warfare, it's a really powerful ship.
Yeah.
But short range E-War bonuses are not that advantage. When's the last time you saw a frickin' Sentinel? So, granted, the Sentinel is extremely strong, especially in faction warfare.
Last night, actually.
Yeah. But the thing is, they're really rare, and I would prefer them to be flown all the time. As I use the example, this is doable. They've done it in the past. The Dictor pass that they did, on every fleet battle, you see possibly all 3 of 4 Dictors. You sometimes see a 4th if you see a probing Dictor for a heretic. But I switched from the Saber, which I was very well known for flying. I switched to the Eris because this Eris is better at what it does. So.
Right.
But like the other ones, the Vengeance and the Ishkar, those are easy to go ahead and show those need buffs. And the Ishkur, it could be minor changes. It could be just a rearrangement of how their drones apply. It could, maybe they get a bigger drone bonus, et cetera. There's a lot of things that could be done to make that more similar to a worm or something like that. But it's just minor numbers to change with. And it just takes a couple of surveys of people who fly the ships already. What would make this ship better? If you went ahead and changed, we have all these different range ones. We have, but when people want tracking ones, there's minor changes. Hell, I know a guy who really wants the Megatron really buffs. His name is Baltec. He's in my corp. But,
yeah?
Yeah. So
that's where he ended up.
Yeah. So by the way, I am the CEO of Backcountry, which is joined Pandemic Horde for a while now. So and we've actually grown by like 4 members this week, which is weird. And I had another guy apply today. So
This makes sense. That actually brings up an interesting question. I'm not sure. It's kind of a non-traditional one, but so like the Imperium have a really long and proud tradition of getting people onto the CSM under other pretenses, only to then betray over to the Imperium once elected. How do we know that your candidacy wasn't decided at the Bob barbecue?
It's really simple. I'm probably not going to get on. The reality is that I think we all know at this point, the CSM, because of ranked voting, is somewhat fixed. The large blocks all agree with each other. We're going to vote these 10 people, right? And they find 1 or 2 people that they all kind of like, I'd find him least objectionable. He talks about, the fact that the wormholers get completely shut out because they couldn't get a ranked vote correct. They couldn't say, we're all going to back this one guy. They got completely shut out. And I think that's terrible. But it's the system that we currently live in. And
that's actually a good example, though. Because the reason why the wormholers couldn't decide, because the last time they decided on somebody, as soon as he got elected, he betrayed them and joined the Imperium.
Yeah. And I can say this. I know that I am not the primary for Horde. There is a good chance another alliance leader who kind of hates me will not allow me to be anywhere near their ballot either. There's a couple other alliances who hate me as well. They will not mention me. I have very little chance. But I think I've been maintaining an overview for 10 years. I've been helping new bros for I don't even know how long at this point. I really am passionate. If I can get those things that I care about heard by other CSM members, encourage other people to foster the ideas, improving the overview as it is now, rather than let's revamp it. Minor changes can go ahead and help. And I can say that the betrayal part, I can't speak to that. I can only speak what my heart is, and that heart is supporting people. And I don't know. And the thing is, these are really simple things I'm proposing too, like the overview change. Just give people an option to pop up a screen and say, hey, some people don't like the default overview because it's garbage. Here's some other options. Click here, and then boom, you have them. Mine is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that the need to redo the overview is something that, like, it's a very popular opinion, and B, CCP has outright said that they are redoing the overview. So, it's a good time to come in there. Although that being said, a lot of these complaints might just be rendered obsolete depending on what kind of revamp that they do, right? Some of these issues might just be the nature of the current iteration. That said, like, one of the things that's always bothered me is the inability, or like the hidden information, right? Like, especially transversal velocity, right? It's a very important feature. It's not on the overview by default. I've actually suggested that it should be on, like, the ships, like when you lock a ship, it should be under the ship's information under locked windows. So that way you're actually aware consciously of the ship that you're shooting at. Because I don't need to know the transversal of every fucking ship on the field. I need to know the transversal of the thing I'm shooting at.
The thing I'm shooting.
Do you think that that's a good idea, or would you encourage something else?
I mean, it's a really simple thing, is that right now it's basically 2 numbers. You got your angular and your transversal, and then all your weapons are in a different number system. So why are we making our lives difficult? If you're going to go ahead and here's your transversal, here's your angular, and here's your tracking speed, figure it out live. Can you hit this guy? No.
Yeah.
And then you miss, and then you're aggressed and whatever else. So there's easy, and I don't want to fix that problem because that's like 3 or 4 sprints. What I'm trying to aim for is single sprint solutions. There was a team called Little Things for a long time that was run by CCP.
It's a project more than a team, but yes, by CCP
Yeah.
Parker.
But it was started as an idea that I had, which is watch list. And that watch list got pushed forward of let's go ahead and watch these people. And if you look at it, I've had some pretty success on Reddit saying, hey, CCP should do this. And they read Reddit. I mean, you can go ahead and say they don't, pay attention, but they do read it at least. So I proposed that they make shuttles bubble immune. They went ahead and added it. I also recommend they add it warp to 0 by default for autopiloting, just because I don't think shuttles should be when people are flying shuttles, they're not in a great space, so just make things easy. And anyway,
that's actually kind of a controversial opinion, obviously, but it's one that I strongly agree with. And the reason why I push back against people that are like, oh, but then people need to be able to be ganked. People don't gank. Like, the gank doesn't often happen on the outgate. It happens when you're aligning to warp. So if you allowed people to just autopilot to 0, then that would just enable people to be able to get around a little bit, and you would still be able to catch them out and kill them during their line, which is when most people get got anyways.
Yep. And I feel that there are a lot of small changes we can make, again, single sprints, and it's just adding dialogue boxes most of the time. Another example is the broadcast history. If you guys ever looked at the broadcast history, everyone has a custom one, right? I mean, you probably have one, right?
Yep.
The colored and everything else. Why just not make a default colored one? You might can go ahead and say, if they don't have a setting, just click here and you can just add one. And once we've had new bros. Yeah. No, they are shareable now.
Oh.
But the thing is that you just go ahead and make it by default. Click at the top of the page. Here's your, everything. Here is DPS. Here is Logi. And they're automatically colored. People don't have to click them. If they don't have anything, populate them. I mean, it hurts almost no one but it helps a new bro do the right thing. Because we've had new bros that have shot ships when they shouldn't have been because they didn't have it color coded. Someone broadcasted for shields, and then they shoot the guy shooting the shields. Realize that I am aiming this at new players in a massive new player alliance. That's why I'm so positive about these are fixable problems, and why I'm so positive that we can fix some of the problems we have with people joining. And I think, and going back to your earlier question of, won't this encourage them to skill inject? I think that's an advertising choice by CCP. And I think that we need to get them to change their mind on that. I know that they want money, because everyone does.
To be clear, I wasn't suggesting that CCP was doing it to promote skill injectors. What I was saying is that when you do things like nerf ships, you open yourself up to that accusation, regardless of whether or not it's true. Like, that's the way that the angst manifests.
Yeah. And it should be, I don't want nerfs to happen. I want buffs on the other ships in that class. If the entire class gets overpowered, it's really easy to take a 10% and change it to a 7.5 from a 7.5 to a 5.5.
Right.
There's really, you're talking about tiny numbers then. So
the thing I agree with you about is that, like, so often historically we've believed that, like, well, you can do whatever you want. We shouldn't tell the players what to do. We don't want to give the players direction, so that way they can make their own direction. But the problem is that if you give them like 2 or 3 options, then they can choose if they want one of those 2 or 3 options, or defined by what options look like, they can make their own option. Giving them nothing, in a weird way, communicates to them that there's nothing to choose. Right? If I give you an option, really, you can either accept it or deny it. If I'm not don't give you an option at all, you don't even know that you're making a choice by choosing to not do it.
Yeah. We see that especially in nullsec because everything is nth degree optimized, right? I mean, if you have someone come to you and say, I want to run Abyssals and I'm going to run it at a Gnosis. And you're like, well, 1, it's not going to fit. And 2, it's a terrible choice to go ahead and do an Abyssal. You're going to go ahead and get an Agila. You're not going to choose anything else but Agila, even though the high price is high. you're going to go ahead and push them towards a certain class of ships. If someone's going to run in our area, we tend to use EM damage because, rogue drones. It's also omni tank. So when someone says, I want to run these in an Abaddon, no, don't do that to yourself. You're a giant target. You're going to die, etc. I feel, and we channel everyone towards certain ships. And I would rather have that diversity. And all it takes is minor changes to some of these ships, changing some of the slot layouts, changing some of the resist bonuses and stuff like that, and you could make some of those ships better or worse. If you put a giant EM hole in a ship and boost the rest of the stuff, I'm sure the people in Dell will be very, very happy. There's a lot of things that could be done by changing those things around. I think you mentioned in your previous interview, the Mimitar being the kind of I win button, because they have kind of even uniform things, but not the slot layout of the Caldari. And Caldari has a slot layout to offset those holes.
So this is actually kind of an interesting question. It's sort of starting to bubble up in chat, and I think it's worth talking to you about, which is that one of the things that I keep running into, and one of the things I've recently made a couple of videos about that have been relatively controversial, is this challenging this notion that EVE Online should be or must be taught by players. That somehow having a 20-year-old untouched PvE means that no PvE could possibly be good. Do you agree with this? Or do you actually believe that there is a way to make EVE Online that doesn't rely on players to handhold people through the process? Do you believe in that idea? Or do you believe that it should be players?
When was the last time you went through the career agents?
The career agents? A month ago. Let's call it that.
Yeah. So I did them just a little while ago as well. They're still the same damn things.
They are
and they're
awful.
and they're terrible. It's like, run these 5 systems, do this thing. Some of them are a joke. Some of them take, one takes 2.5 hours. So I kind of timed them all just to see how bad it was. The new NPE, honestly, pretty good, but it's just way too short. And I recognize that making that content is expensive, especially when they're trying to do voice and everything else and make it interesting with the story, etc.
Yeah, and the next thing they're doing, ironically, is actually replacing the career agents with this system, or redoing the career agents with the system.
Yeah,
but so I guess that's my question: is that is this an issue where the career agents have failed and therefore need to be made better, or it's a lost cause to try to teach people through PvE?
I believe that it is teachable through PvE. I believe that the changes they've done in Potch and with wormholes has shown they can do player-like activity. I think that the example of the Diamond Brats, if you've ever fought any of those guys, when they have the massive fleets and stuff like that, I think those are good examples of this is possible with the current engine. Right. And I feel that it just gets overwhelming because, you have to do this, you have to do this. I don't think it should be like that. I think it's like, I want to understand how to tackle. It would be very easy to have an in-game class. I run a tackle class for Horde, and I have a Dictor 101 class that almost everybody in Horde goes through. But the idea is that it's very easy to go ahead and put something together that says, hey, go do this thing, and maybe you give them a free ship for it. And maybe that does break kind of the sandboxy part of it. But if I can find that niche, so at EVE Vegas, I did a presentation on finding your role within EVE. And I think that's a really strong argument of how they could break up these ideas. If you want to go ahead and do mining, go do mining, and don't obscure it with you're going to go do production and they're going to call it something else. You want to do mining, go do mining. You want to go ahead and do E-War, here's a thing on E-War, and it can be a 10-minute thing. The key is you don't want it to be an hour. Tackling, you might have it be 20 minutes or something like that because it's really fast and really complicated. But it's really interesting to say, oh crap, he can shoot you from there, and give feed him reps and stuff like that. There's a lot of things they could do, and I feel that there's ways to have the game do this for it and make it easy they already have instance combat. So just move some of that tutorial stuff into an instance combat so people can do it from wherever they are, rather than, I now have to go ahead and fly all the way back to my 1.0 system so I don't get messed with. So
One of the things
maybe
I've recommended is a simulator.
Yeah.
So like most of the tutorials would actually just be like you pick which tutorial you want to do, and then it tells you to dock up, and then you just run through the simulation. You could do a simulation with other people, so that way somebody could bring you in and help you out with your tackle practice in a place that has no reward but also no cost. And most importantly, if you open it up to that, what I think is cool is that you could actually have big set pieces as like the backdrop for these simulations. Like, what if your final exam for combat piloting was during a reenactment of BTAC-R, right?
Yeah.
Like that I think would be really cool, but a lot of people would push back against that. Hell, a lot of people have been pushing back at the idea about the Abyss and no instance PvE. What do you say to that? Is it worth not having, like, is there a problem with there being instance PvE in the sandbox? Is it worth the cost?
I am not a fan of it, honestly. I prefer the straight space version. We do a lot of ESS combat, and it's not instance combat, but it sure feels like it sometimes. Because the way everyone's running these kitey ships, they're just going to run away as soon as they can, and they just wait for someone to come up far enough away from everybody else, and then they attack them. And it goes back to your previous interviewer that that distances are just way too long. It's just that weapons are super effective over those distances. So, but that's the thing is that CCP, I think, is thinking like a big games company at this point. They're like, well, we need to get professional voice actors to come in. And no, don't do that. Ask your players. Say, Mr. V, come in and talk to me about how you would go ahead and suggest someone go ahead and do this class. There are volunteers we already have that would be happy to go ahead and say, hey, we were in this big fight and I'm not sure what to do. Player, what do you think I should do here? And then when he says the wrong thing, that says, no, you're stupid. And then you just, go do this for me right now. And then yell at them when they don't do it wrong, blow them up, have them restart. And the thing is, that's how Eve works right now, is you get yelled at by your FC, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And just have them reset, go reship, go bring about something out. If it has zero cost, it doesn't have any, thought process to it. So maybe you end up having with, later on, you have actual cost to it when it gets serious. But having that moment of, it's a Skinner box of, you get this moment of pleasure. You did something right.
Right.
And I feel that there's ways for us to go ahead and encourage our own players to enable people. And it's really simple. Record something on YouTube that you think would help teach these people something. CCP can look through those, say, we're going to go ahead and implement this. We're going to put your name on it. Your little Eve tile is going to go in there. And then until someone's better comes along, I think there's be a lot of people out there be really interested in that. And it's using the sandbox rather than being dictated to.
Right. So there is the Eve Academy, right? And this is actually a really good kind of example of the direction of what you're talking about. So the Eve Academy was made mostly by CCP Aurora, but a lot of the stuff that was written in here was actually written by players. Specifically, I think Ashy wrote a lot of, helped out with a lot of this. And in it, they have explicitly a bunch of links to things, community resources, and different corporations to join. And if you go into like the different areas, there's different videos and tutorial guides, made by players even, to help out. So it feels like they're kind of going in that direction, but I do actually think it would be really, really cool for there to be some sort of campaign or like process to be like, hey, we are looking for submissions for the Eve Academy. If you have a topic and an explanation, if it's a video, if it's a blog, written, however you want to do that content, if you submit it and we accept it and put it on the Eve Academy, we reward you with, we're going to go with Interbus points. Like, I think that's a fantastic initiative to do, to bridge that gap of like the difference between CCP teaching things and player teaching things. Having the players be able to create the tutorials that then CCP embeds into the game. I think that would be really cool.
I think making a full engine would be difficult, but it could be really simple. See if you have voice comms from an active fighter thing where an FC said, go do this thing for me. And then they just give it to a player. And granted, it might have swear words in it because I think we've all seen This Is Eve, and then we've seen This Is Eve, for real with Shadu. So I think that it would be fun because it's the spirit of the game of you're getting thrown into the fire here. You're going to go do this one thing for me. And I don't care what happens to you afterwards because you're just going to go do that thing for me. And granted, every time you might die in a fire, every single time. But if it's instance PvP and you're going to die anyway, you're going to get kicked out in your pod after you start it, and you can start it from anywhere. I think that's a really encouraging way to go ahead and get players involved and understanding how they do things. And I don't know. But I mean, we still have the other problems, and I think that a lot of the other guests are kind of addressing that. Those of there's nothing to fight over. The vault keys, for instance, I think was another thing Kenneth Fell pointed out. I think those are completely pointless. Who cares if someone's stealing from I can't steal from it, so why do I care if someone's stealing from my backup vault?
It is super wonky.
Congratulations, you won a key. You managed to get a key. You just made a bill or something like that. So
yeah, it's I was kind of disappointed by the reserve bank, but is scarcity over?
It's getting worse for people who rat, that's for sure, with the BRMs. We're lucky in Horde that we foster people to come out to our space to attack us, and then we attack them back. So we have a lot of ships that die around us. There are other places that are harder to get to that are seeing less and less players. And so if they're running a crab or something like that, it's harder for them to do it. I think that the dread changes are real positive because we'll start to see more of that kind of large scale battle. So maybe that'll fix things. I can't say on the mining front. I don't have an experience, but I have a lot of people that I work with real heavily that understand these things well. And I hope to rely on them if I do manage to get it. But again, I suspect, realize Storm Delay is our first for Pandemic Horde, so you're going to probably talk to him at some point, and we'll listen to his guidance on that because he understands that really well. So
that's fair.
But again, I don't feel that we don't have a new bro candidate. We have people that say, "Oh, I'm a new bro." I've been helping new bros for literally 10 years. I was a director inside Goons, and I was mostly helping new players. I'm now a CEO, and I do a bunch of other stuff helping with boarding new people and stuff like that. So inside Horde. And so I don't know.
Do you think that there's been a change in the nature of new bros in the last couple of years?
I feel that we're seeing more people who think they can just buy their way in, which is concerning because you find out that we have guys who join Horde. Horde has a somewhat complicated, to use capitals. You have to be part of an ESI gated corp. And so it takes a while to get into that. But we have people who've come in and said, "Oh, I injected to a carrier because I heard that was a great way to rat." And you're like, "Well, you don't have the history to do that. You don't know the buttons to press. Carrier ratting for vets is hard." And
I honestly see that more as an advice problem than the reality of the game problem, which is one of the reasons why I come back to the fact that the basics should be taught by the game because players teach players really bad things sometimes. There is a question, and I guess this is an elephant to deal with. Why did Backcountry leave the Imperium?
Backcountry left because of low participation. I was doing the participation numbers at the moment, and I said, "I'm sorry, guys, you don't have enough people showing up to combat." And so they kind of went dead. And then when I got booted, me and one other guy, Innominate, moved a dread cache from one place to another place. It took us about, 4 days to move, or like that, constant jumping. And then those people started being jerks to me, and so they booted me, and so I relabeled the station Secret Dread Cache, and then I was booted from Guns for that. So,
well, aren't they the judgy sort? So,
yeah.
Okay, and your third bullet point is keep CCP from stepping on themselves. This is obvious. A, it's not obvious to me what you mean by that, and B. Is this really a responsibility that you want to try to take on? Is that really is that what the standard that you want to lay upon yourself on the CSM? Is that really your job?
I feel that the changes that CCP has made specifically with the 1 month buy or change price is the biggest problem I think that they've introduced for new bros, because new bros don't want to go ahead and pay $20 to play a game to its full potential for a month. And so they are encouraged to buy the extended versions, and maybe they'll burn out quick. But if that happens, then they're never going to come back to the game. And I feel that it hurts us. And I recognize that they need to get paid. I understand that they're having problems because of the different currency changes, and also the lack of Russian players. So they're trying to find new avenues. But there's a lot of other games out there that make it really easy. I think Path of Exile is the best example of, free to play, whatever, with a ton of different options. If you want to ask your question that you're asking everybody, I'd love to answer
it. The most important question?
Yes, the most important
question. That comes later.
Okay. No problem.
Spoilers. Well, so one of the things I've been thinking about is the fact that, free to play has some pretty significant issues. Josh Rafe Hayes, for example, is a YouTuber that's talked about this quite a bit. Free to play encourages predatory practices. It encourages bad design, because it's actually like it encourages developers to build inconveniences such that they can then sell the solution. And that a subscription is more like a faith in the actual playing of the game itself. So one of the things that I thought was very interesting is that they took the heraldry system, which could have been a microtransaction, and instead are using it to promote activity in the game, which, as everybody I think would agree, like that's really the thing that's missing. That's the thing that's the problem right now, is we need more people out in more ships doing more things. So if we can use something that would normally be used for monetization to make the gameplay better, and therefore fold that into the subscription, therefore making it so that CCP is doubling down on the fact that they make money when people stay and pay for subscriptions rather than buying some fancy skins or the skill injectors or whatever like that. Wouldn't we see that as a good thing?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we see that as a good thing?
I think we should. And I feel that the problem is that that's not what's happening. What's happening right now is you're getting these advertisements that new bros are seeing. They're saying, hey, you want to get in that ship now? Just buy these injectors. And then they buy extractors. And then they're like, I don't know what to do with these. And then they sell them and then buy injectors from them and spend, 3 billion ISK doing it. And it's just a gobsmacking amount of money. And I hope that CCP is seeing that money and using it. But, when we have, patches where they go ahead and say, or, the recent, FanFest where, we're working on stuff. It's coming. We don't know when. It's frustrating.
Well, they know when. They just don't want to. Well, they supposedly know when, but they just don't want to tell us because they want it to come out diegetically. Which, I mean, these are things that I can appreciate, but A, they weren't sold well, and B, they really need to prove it. The problem is that lack of faith in the company right now is at an all-time low. Right? If people actually had faith in CCP to do what they said that they're going to do, there'd be more people excited about the announcements. The announcements themselves were exciting. It's just most people believe that they won't be able to deliver.
Yep. The technical debt problem they have, there's no other, 2003 era game out there that's doing as well as EVE, other than possibly World of Warcraft. But they have 10 times as many developers, and they're constantly putting out new packs, and they can say, well, you don't pay for enhancements or whatever like that. What are they called? I forget what WoW calls them. But the expansion packs. But the thing is that we pay for a subscription, and it's going up in price while everyone else is going down. So I don't know. And but I will point, no other 2003 era game looks as good as EVE does, because the art department inside CCP is fantastic. And so it gets into the whole, the whole cosmetic thing. If they could get more people to buy cosmetics and show off their alliance, if you had a skin you could buy here at Keepstar that was only buyable by Plex, I'm sure every single, group would try to buy one of those. So there's minor things they could do to go ahead and change that stuff. So,
yeah. And it is a very complicated issue. So I somebody posted a thing that's from today which is your perfect start in New Eden. For $7, there's the starter pack that unlocks better ships with Omega, in exchange Plex for millions of IS to buy weapons, ships, and more, double training speed for accelerated progress, and unlimited skill queue access. So part of the problem with this is that like it can be very easily misinterpreted, right? Like it just sounds like you get to unlock and this has definitely happened, where a bro will buy that and be like, "What do you mean I can't fly the ships now? I paid to unlock them."
Let me give you a firm example. The Black Ops Battleship pack. How long were they selling that? And people assume that, oh, after this you'll be able to fly a Black Ops. No, you get a freaking skin for a Black Ops.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah. And then like, if I remember the Get Your Revenge one, that was one of the biggest things about the Get Your Revenge, is because it seemed to imply that if you bought it, you would literally get your ship back. And so people would buy it and then be like, "Where's the ship?" And they're like, "Well, here's your Plex." And they're like, "What the fuck am I supposed to do with this?" Which is an interesting point, because like I said, this is a very complicated challenge, because one of the things that is an issue is that just simply selling people the Plex isn't sufficient. This is why they want to sell fit destroyers. This is why they want to sell fit retrievers. Even if the fits aren't necessarily great, the stats show that people buy them, and the people that buy them are happy with their purchase and are more likely to be retained. This is not because these ships are so good of a deal. It's because the act of fitting a ship is so intimidating, right? I can give a new bro $1 billion fucking ISK and tell him to go hog wild, and he won't even know to go to Jita, let alone what to buy when he gets there.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that we have, so in Horde, we have super easy shipping services. Very easy to do if you read. It is so hard for a small corp to go ahead and move their stuff from point A to point B. And it might not need to be. There's things that could be done. And I'm not proposing any solutions right now, because I think that CCP would have to look at it. But, there's a lot of things that could be done to make people's lives easier. And I know everyone's like, well, EVE is a hard game. It doesn't need to be. Why not make it a fun space game that we could all fly and enjoy? You still have the major loss. I don't know if you've played Tarkov before, but that's a very easy game to go ahead and take your most expensive shit and lose it. I know I've done it. I got handed a whole bunch of stuff when I bought the Heart of Darkness pack, and then lost it all immediately, dying in a fire. And eventually I got better, but,
I'm going to actually counter that. I think that EVE Online can and should be challenging, but not obtuse, right? Yes. The challenge shouldn't come from it being hard to learn things. It shouldn't be that essential information is hidden. The challenge is, once you understand it, executing, right? Yeah. Like, that should be where the challenge is. I want to fight against pilots that know what the fuck they're doing. And I don't necessarily want to fight, I don't want to win because the pilot has never been taught what power grid is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
they don't know that they can overheat things. They don't know that they can go ahead and align to warp things faster. They don't know the align speed that gets you into warp. They don't know. There's so many things.
So I'm going to actually double down on this concept and say that, not only does this obtuseness not make the game actually hard, but it makes it so that the game has to be easier. Because CCP cannot rely on people to know what they're doing, the content itself must compensate for that lack of understanding and knowledge. Therefore, I believe that if the game taught you the mechanics better, they could have higher expectations on those pilots, especially in PvE. This is why I push back against the Abyss as far as instance content. The fact that they can say, during this window of time, you don't have to pay attention to D-scan. You don't have to pay attention to all that external stuff, because I demand your full focus. You get to pay attention to me now. I'm the threat. And that is actually good. You want people to be able to devote their full focus onto it. But it has to be the challenge. And I think that by providing that, we are outfitting people to then be more prepared to go on with a sense of mastery and move on to the next thing. So by making aspects of the game that make the game easier to learn, you actually can make the game harder to play.
Yes. Like how many ships have you lost because your overview was messed up?
I don't want to talk about it.
I've lost one, so it happens.
Well, I mean, in Faction Warfare, it was so bad that we actually have a thing called Unfuck Your Overview that you just like post everywhere. Because like by default, it shows criminals and suspects over Faction Warfare guys. So like people would just attack friendlies all the fucking time.
Yeah. And I've helped so many people with that particular issue if in my overview pack. Because there's a number of times when people are like, well, he was blinky red. He's like, he's in your goddamn alliance, don't shoot him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And while I do think like there's a complication when it comes to like when they add new elements into the UI, into the overview, letting it cascade forward because of the way it's stored, that's a bit complicated. But the defaults, they can absolutely fix those. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they can make a better overview for people.
If angels were in your overview before and now they suddenly are, what's similar to angels? Oh, well, these are. So just go ahead and add them in, and just update the person's back and then done.
Right. Well, I mean, it's difficult because, like I said, the way it's stored in the back end.
It's a null value. So
yeah, exactly. It's like, how do I know? Like, it's just not listed. Well, okay.
I know it's really hard to do versioning on your settings. You go ahead and say if it's this set version settings, right. It doesn't have this, add this. Done.
Yeah. And then like if it did automatically update, would people even want that? Like, anyway, so you've been in this game for a while, obviously. Mm-hmm. You've been active for a while, obviously. Mm-hmm. You've been working hard to improve the game for yourself and others for a while, obviously. I don't think, this is the first time you've ever ran for the CSM. What caused you to be like, I got it now?
Newbie asked me to. It was one of those things where
a single newbie? Finally, somebody?
Newbie. Yeah, someone said, you should run for CSM, and I'm like, why? And I'm like, well, I'm already well known. I go to Eve Vegas quite often. I'm well known of showing up as the dude or Walter from Big Lebowski. So,
I'm the dude. I got the hair, I got the beard. I can go get my bathrobe that I wear all the time.
I'm just saying, it's a great costume.
It is.
If you go to Vegas,
it's sweet.
So it's one of the things where I feel that I could make minor changes that can improve the game for everybody, specifically with the new players, because people don't interact with them enough, or they don't understand the challenges that they have. And on the other side, you have CCP who's pushing them to, hey, you need to do this. And then if you talk to any of the nullsec blocks or any of the low-sec blocks or any of the faction warfare people, they're like, you want to fly what in faction warfare? No, stop that. Fly, here's a Tristan. They're going to give you a small little ship or something like that. And so much of EVE is, you need to be in Aquila and it's cost you 300 million ISK and you need to get there no matter what happens because this is the only way to play this game. And I think that there's better ways to encourage players to not do. I think we all know the players that have done the ship up, where they start with frigates and they're like, oh, these are not these. I died. And then they die in a cruiser and they're like, oh, I died in that. I need a battleship. And then they get in a battleship and they immediately lose it. I can't even count the number of people I've helped with that particular problem. So,
although I do question how much of that problem is caused by the players, I will agree that the solution could potentially come from CCP, right?
Yeah.
By leaving these giant holes in understanding, they leave things open for people. Sure, people can get great answers, but they can also get no answers, and they can also get terrible answers. And the idea 100%. That like EVE Online is this, you must do this, is something that gets put out over and over again. To that end, I can already hear a lot of people in my audience, new bros, people like that, but people that spend time in high sec, that enjoy that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That are hearing you and being like, this mother trucker still feels that the correct answer is to get everybody into a null block. Convince me that you are the new bro supporter for everyone, not just the people that want to join a big newbie corporation within a null block.
The reason I like the null block is because we take care of our newbies. If you're stuck in high sec, you join these shitty corps that take advantage of you. And that's my problem. And there's some out there that really take care of their new bros as well. I think EVE University still does a pretty decent job. Red versus Blue, great job, used to do. I don't know what they're doing now. But I think that's the problem, is that there isn't an Empire one. Yeah, I know, you have yours. But the key is that the number of new bro friendly groups outside the null blocks are pretty small. And there are a lot of them that take advantage. So I've played, because I want to experience the NPE, I will sometimes join some of these high sec ones. I don't generally join the null sec ones because I don't want to be a spy. I suck at being a spy. It's easy to spot me, and I'm too friendly. I overly helpful. There's actually a term for me called Kismeteering, and that's helping when I shouldn't be helping. So,
well, but what do you say to people that might be concerned that you want to support the new bros, but that your answer for them is to join a null block, and that's not the answer that they necessarily want?
I want people to find gameplay they find encouraging. I want them to be flying spaceships. If they want to stay in high sec forever, I find it to be a hollow experience, because it's like, mining for leather in World of Warcraft. It's, just grinding that ISK to go ahead and pay for your account. And I don't feel that's, I think, okay, my most popular meme.
Isn't that a false dichotomy, though? Because we were just talking about new bros, and you responded with people that want to stay in high sec forever. I'm not talking about that.
Yep.
I'm talking about people that want to get used to the game, learn the game, feel like they can be a new bro, and get their answers without having to then pick which of the monolithic organizations they want to fall into before they even understand the game.
Yeah. I don't know. So I'll go back to my most popular Reddit post, which is basically the guy he's walking next to his girlfriend, and then she's mining and she's looking annoyed, and he's looking around and looking at the PvP one.
Distracted boyfriend. Yes.
So I think that is the answer. I want people to play the game first, and I want them to get into the PvP aspect, because I think how many games do you know that can play 20 versus 20, 164 versus 64? You have PlanetSide that had 600 or something like that. There's no other game in the world. They're like, I want 2,000 of my closest friends to go in and all fight over the goddamn thing that doesn't even matter. And we're just going to throw balls to the wall. We're going to throw everything in there. The big fights are why I play this game, and it's why I support the null blocks. I wish there was aspects of that in high sec more often. If CCP ran events that were more interesting, that the Concord system could handle. I think if you've seen it, every time high sec gets over 1,400 people, it gets very hard to manage.
What's missing from events to make them interesting?
It's value usually. It's
Are you kidding?
Drop interesting skins. No, I think that's what it is. They are dominated by null blocks who realize they can go ahead and just alpha everybody off the field.
I was making 20 to 25 million per site in high sec during the last event.
The last event? Yeah. The last event was pretty good, but the thing is, it's not encouraging multiple people to fight over it. That's the difference. And I would encourage.
Okay.
They weren't fighting against each other. There was a race to DPS the thing down to win it.
Well, but the more expensive, the significantly better sites are in low sec. So there is an encouragement to. The thing is that like by having that race in high sec, it causes people to become extremely frustrated at the fact that people can just come in and do something about it. Which, of course, the solution is that they can then move on to low sec if they wanted to do that and be able to get more money. Isn't that perfect? What's boring about events right now that they actually need to add in?
Again, it's just more people, because that's what makes Eve different for me.
Okay.
Is that I don't necessarily want. So I realize that everyone wants this small gang content. They don't want small gang content. They want to gank somebody. All of Eve is based on the idea of asymmetric warfare. And I also have a saying that says Eve is 90% boring, about 9% pretty okay. And then that last 1% that you get aim for, it rarely happens, but it's fucking amazing when it happens. It is the best feeling ever when you pull it out of the fire. And it doesn't happen often. It's a really rare thing, even if you constantly put yourself in danger. You can see that on streamers especially, because they're spending 30% of the time fitting up a ship and then trying to travel to the place. They're spending another 50% of the time just dodging people and stuff like that. And then they have sort of combat, and then they have a real good combat. So if you look at people's streams, it's only 1% of the time when you can clip something and say, this was amazing. So.
All right. So you were saying that if CCP makes more interesting events, how can CCP make an event more interesting?
when I say events, I mean more like they're going to go ahead and run a fleet through a system, and then they're going to blow up a super or something like that, and then stuff is going to drop out of it. There's ways for CCP, and that was the events I was talking about when I said events, not necessarily. Like, I think the Doctor Who one was kind of bullshit. I really like the ice one, though.
It's funny that you say that, because I was about to say that I was about to give the Doctor Who as a really good example of one that had really good progression and really felt like it was deep and something to work through.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was bullshit?
Because most of it was just gathering stuff to do more sites, and the number of skins they dropped and interesting things they bought was just kind of lackluster, and it didn't make sense to me. And why, like the whole red versus blue explosion things, those didn't make sense to me, and they weren't used anywhere else. And there's if there's a way for players to go ahead and use those things, drop a blue bubble, drop a red bubble, I think that would have been really interesting. So
I think that this is actually a good example of the fact that it isn't so much that the sites themselves weren't interesting, it's that they weren't well communicated, and therefore people couldn't access the interest. For those of us who actually got dug in deep, like by the time you got to the maximum tier difficulty, you're talking about, like, I had the maps memorized. We knew exactly what we needed to do. We needed to execute it correctly. Each of the people needed, both pilots needed to do the correct thing. You had to rely on the other person to do their job.
I was doing them solo, so I don't know what you were doing.
I'm talking about like the tippy top layers, because
that's what I was doing in solo. So,
well, aren't you fancy?
Yeah. So, but the things, we were encouraging new players to go out and do these. The ice one, like I said, was really good because new bros could hop into mining ships and do mining. And it was mining that was interesting because we also had a PvP aspect to it. We were sending I had a tackle hauler that everyone was jumping into coveters and jumping all the drones on people that were kind of popping around trying to PvP people. So that was interesting. And again, that's instant combat. And I think it was instant combat done correctly where people can come in after you.
The ice event was instanced? You mean like it was gated?
To a degree. It was gated.
Got it.
And you could only bring hauling industrial ships into the sites.
Right.
So you could bring an Orca in, you could bring in a hauler in, you could bring any of the mining ships in. But you couldn't bring in, battleship. But you could sit on the outside with a battleship and mess with people. So.
Right. And the important thing I think to note to there is that the winter event in particular is hyper condensed. There is only a few metaliminal storms out there, and those are where the sites are. And everybody gets magical teleportation devices to go to those areas, but not leave. And I think that's really the key.
What, you don't carry a Potchfin exit sign with you all the time?
Sure, you can, but that's still not. I mean, that's not as. That still is. It's a strategy, but it's not by itself. It's not like I can be like, and now I'm back in Cheetah. You know what I mean? Like there is. You can rationalize it that way. Oh, well, you just go to Potchfin and then you just cloak, you just walk around for 15 minutes. But the reality of it is it gets a little bit more complicated than that.
That's the thing, is for me, it was just the sheer value. The amount of drops that you got in the Doctor Who event specifically were unvaluable at the end of the event. At the end of the the winter event, most of the skins were honestly still very valuable. There was a lot of variety in those as well, and I wish that they would bring more of that kind of feel to it of, hey, I just need to grind this and then I can get a whole bunch of valuable things. And because of the concentrated nature and because you had so many hostiles running around there, I felt that was more interesting. But that was just me. Yeah,
well, and that's why I'm digging into this, because I want to. We say things like make more interesting sites. Well, what makes something more interesting, right? Like, somebody else in chat is saying, well, each event site just does the same thing. So would mixing up what kind of things you're doing in the sites, this site has 3 different rooms or splits into 2 and, like different kinds. Like, is that what makes things more interesting? Or does having everybody have to go to a specific area in LowSec make things interesting? Right? You get what I'm saying? Like, that's why I think it's important to do.
Imagine if you had a high-tech event where you had to can flip an NPC and then it sets you suspect. I think that would be hella fun.
I do feel like CCP has tap danced around the idea of having sites that make you go suspect by going inside of them since literally Invasions, but has yet to have the balls to actually do it.
Yeah.
Technically they've done it once during Operation Highlander, which was the Dust Eve event in Luminaire, when the Gallente started attacking the Caldari, the Concord showed up, and then Gallente attacked Concord, and so Concord said, fuck this, and left, and everyone in the system went suspect.
Yes. And that's the thing, I feel that CCP just has more of that kind of, event on a regular basis where CCP is going to go do this thing. They're going to control this thing, and then this event's going to happen, and someone's going to win, someone's going to lose, etc. But anybody that goes in there has a chance of getting shot. Granted, that does amplify my own personal love of mass scale combat, because I just want to have 100 people fight 100 people. I mean, that's my ideal. If I can I want a plus 100 people to fight another plus 100 people. And granted, it kind of screws the small groups. But if there's some way to go, and I think that the things that Aurora was talking about encouraging people to do faction warfare, even though they're not inside of faction warfare, that might get me my want.
Right.
Because I think that would be really cool, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I think we would pick Gallente because I'm a Gallente pilot, so I figured Horde would pick my preferred race and not the slavers of Amar. But I'm sure that if you're going to go ahead and look at it, Goons will probably pick something opposite. So if we can allow ourselves, have Horde versus Goons and plus a whole bunch of other randoms that kind of join us for just these events, I think that could be really interesting.
I agree with that.
I'm a nullsec guy. I want the big combat. The small game combat is just kind of boring at this point. So it's, hey, do you have an ESS ship? Go in and then maybe die to a guy who's managed to set himself up an hour ago in there.
Well, but when it comes to being a new bro person, isn't saying it's boring at this point kind of, lack of better words, out of touch? I mean, so like one of the things that we run into a lot in faction warfare is that we end up with leaders that go, well, nobody wants to plex anymore. But that's because they've been doing it for so long, right? Yeah. We still have new players. We still have like line members that are interested in doing that. But the leadership that are becoming older and more curmudgeon-y, their priorities shift, and so they project that shift of priorities on their new players. Something that's now boring for you isn't like by definition not boring to a new player because it's still novel.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. And we actually run a class that we call it so we have a standing fleet. I don't know if you know this. Horde has one of the best standing fleets out there in that we have somewhere between 150, 200 people at any given time in standing fleet, and about 30 to 50 of them are at any point trying to chasing people around, and then you have another 50. If there's a fight, they'll be back up and come. So when you talking about small game contact, you're talking about, you're going to have 80 guys running after you. Now, granted, that's not for everybody, and we don't get. And then when we do get good fights, sometimes they're pretty unbalanced, and we definitely lose a lot of ships as well. But we have a class we run for new bros that's just understanding how standing fleet works, of just run here, try and grab something. Go in here, shoot this guy, stuff like that. And it gets them into the spirit of things. And then when they do it successfully, I ran one of these tackle fleets. We had a Loki, the dumbest Loki pilot in the entire world. He decided to go ahead and shoot at the Eris. And it was a really bad move because he burned off in a direction that was not aimed at the Celestial. And because I was similar speed to him, all the new bros can swarm him, and he couldn't turn, because if he turned, I would have caught him. And so he ended up dying to all of the new bros, and I managed to live as well. So 6 of the new bros died. They were all in slashers. The slasher is a great ship. And then all of Standing Fleet came and just waxed this Loki entirely.
I was about to say, didn't we just cover the fact that the slasher wasn't a good ship? But that was somebody in chat. That was somebody in chat. That wasn't you. Somebody in chat tried to disparage the slasher.
It's a great ship.
But that's my point from earlier, is that like somebody can legitimately be like, this ship is useless. Where meanwhile somebody else is like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Do you know what I can do with that fucking thing?
Yeah, if you give an experienced pilot a slasher, a T2 slasher, it's the simplest thing in the world. It is the most powerful thing ever, because you just need experienced pilots to be able to do it. So,
yeah, and I think that I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name, but it's a great comment, and I think that this kind of brings this to a close, or I don't know. puts a final point on it, which is the number one rule in EVE: don't trust any other player ever. Rule number 2 in EVE: it's a multiplayer game, so you must join a player corp in order to have any fun. Yeah. That is inherently the problem, right? Like every time we come back to this, that is like the unspoken issue, which is that like we want players to to learn from other players, to join other players. We say that that's the best experience, and yet we relish in the fact that we play a game in which players can be shitty to one another, and we get mad anytime CCP does anything to change any of that. Oh, it's Sophia. Okay.
Yeah. Sophia is actually one of our NBIs, so it makes a lot of sense.
There you go. And so I think that ultimately that's the problem. That's the $1 million question, or I guess 33% question.
$20
that CCP has to answer this year, if nothing else. And therefore, people like you that are interested in tackling that problem, that has been tackling that problem, trying to figure out what people need to teach, what can be taught by players, what you would love to have players be able to be taught by CCP, because why the hell is this being reinvented every single time? You are the kind of person, to be legitimate, we need on the CSM this year in particular, because that's this. And even if you don't get elected, I hope that the CCP that watches this interview, if nothing else, know to come and talk to you, because I think that you have some really good feedback. But I think it would be absolutely best in that way if people voted you in. So by that, I think that you are a very powerful candidate in that sense. I think that
Thank you. I have no chance, but it's fine.
That's fair. I mean, I think that the real problem is that, you know, your demographic is a lot null blocks or null sec focused people, but at the same time, null blocks are both insular and organized. So yeah, like it's kind of like you either have the ticket or not. Whereas if you want to be a high sec candidate, it's a little bit more about like base building or whatever. But I think that you've done a great job at setting the narrative of the conversation. You know, it's the third party spoiler candidate or whatever kind of effect. And I hope that you do better than you think you did. You're going to. And if nothing else, I think that, you know, if you keep at it, you're the kind of person that could very well get onto the CSM, if not this year, then next year.
Yeah. And I really think that the CSM is popular, and that I think that CCP is doing a great thing by including the players' voices, because how many other games we played that have just completely been turned into garbage because they don't listen to their players. So the one I'm mad about is Empyrean. So if they just listened to their players, they would be so much better off. So anyway, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. If you want to ask your ultimate question.
Yeah. So as a last question, although your camera's dead, can you reset your camera real quick?
Yeah, give me a second.
There we go. All right. So to close this up, most important question of the night, of course, cat ears, yes or no?
Yes. Dog ears, yes. Anything that people will buy for money, do it. Why do you care? If someone cares, give them a giant pink thorax that they call their penis. Who cares? I want the Hello Kitty crossover that one of our ex-CCP employees really loved. So
yeah, the pink thorax, we've already crossed that threshold. Heart surge exists. Yeah. So you might as well have cat ears. It's true. I've actually really liked, I can't remember what when it came out, but like the idea, you know, snake hat. I've said snake hat greater than cat ears. What I want is like special effects, so that way when I scram somebody with the snake hat or web it, webbing, because it's, you know, I'm a Serpentis ship. I have snake hat. I web somebody. The snake literally like leaps out and grabs them as my web effect.
Yeah. If someone wants a rainbow trail behind them when their MWD kicks on, I think that'd be great. There's a lot of places games to steal from. I mean, anything in Path of Exile, go ahead and just steal the idea. It's not hard. Have a giant effect appear over a ship. Hey, shoot me.
Saying that we shouldn't have ways to customize something in a sandbox is like, you can't argue with me that it's a sandbox and we need to protect it, but we shouldn't have cat ears. Like those two things, you only get to have one of those positions where I come from.
We're a mean space game. How dare you make it lighthearted and fun?
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been great having you here. Is there anything else that you want to address before we go?
No, I really appreciate this. I think you're getting a lot of attention to some of the smaller candidates in particular. I realize the nullsec voting blocks make it hard, but it can definitely help with those people's ideas to be heard and get CCP to listen. And I think CCP is starting to listen. And I have great faith in CCP Swift, having played with him when I was part of PL. So I think that it's great that he's doing this.
Man, you just dropped that at the end. Been part of BL, been part of the Imperium, now in okay, whatever, fine. Traitor.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't have any balls in that race at all. But no, you're absolutely right. I think that I personally feel like we're going in the right direction. I understand why there's a lot of angst within the player base, but that's, I think, why it's important for us to find people that are willing to be at least level-headed about all of this, so that way because it could get fucked up. Like, it could all just be bad. And the more that we just whinge about it rather than actually provide anything constructive, the more likely that is. We're actually making the situation worse for ourselves. So, having that kind of cool-headed approach, I think, is incredibly valuable.
I want people to be excited about this game because I'm excited about this game. I annoy people because I'm so excited about this game, and I get excited when we're on field and I do the wrong thing. But I'm happy to be there. I want people to be happy to be doing the things they are. I don't want people to be like, well, this is stupid, I'm going to go play a better game, because there's always a better game. But right now, there's no other space game that's like Eve at all.
Absolutely true, and a great point. Kismeteer, thank you for coming. It's been a blast. And thank you all for watching. If you're checking this out on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe before you go. Ask any questions for Kismeteer in the comments down below, or head over to his forum post, which is linked in the doobly-doo down below. If you're watching this on the playlist, just go ahead and hang tight. We're going to go straight on to the next video. But either way, I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching this and becoming well-informed about all of the candidates this year. It is incredibly important for us to have a well-informed electorate, because that's how we get an effective CSM. And that is, we don't get a lot of tools. The CSM is a tool for us. If it's good or bad, it's on us, and it's only to our benefit. So it behooves us to have as effective of a CSM as possible, and we only get that by taking it seriously and voting. So thank you guys for putting up with all of this. I do it because
real life.
I do it because I think that it's important and it's worth my time, and I'm glad that you guys were able to show up and show that it was worth your time. So on behalf of Kismeteer and myself, thank you guys for coming. I have been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and until next time, we'll see you in space.